it's my great pleasure to be a part of this conversation. And I'm not really presenting. I'm going to lead some conversation with Valarie. Valarie is, to me, when I think of DEI, there is nobody more qualified that I could think of who could talk to us about the importance of it and why it's such a hot topic. And I mean, all of us in all of our walks of life, whether it's Rotary, whether it's in your professional life, there are a lot of organizations that are talking about DEI, and it's really become a priority. So I'm going to ask Valarie to kind of, maybe in her words, explain to us why, today is the time where this should be happening and why this has become so front and center for so many places.
Well, thanks, Sue. And, you're absolutely right. Diversity, equity, and inclusion has become an important part of discussions, both in the public and private sectors. However you receive your news, that, whether you're watching the news, reading a newspaper, on Twitter, every day we're seeing that systematic issues are not only occurring in the workplace, but also in various societal sectors. We see it in financial services and housing and healthcare and education and justice as well. So, in the wake of global events and the rise of the activism that we're seeing and the focus on issues around race and environmental justice and just events in society in general, Rotary has made this a priority. And we've heard from Rotary members around the world that they want to see Rotary take meaningful action to help further our impact through being more inclusive and equitable. So, when we think about it, and we just had a birthday in Rotary, 118 years, but we know that embracing diversity has been rooted in our history. And Paul Harris has quoted many times that's our strength, that we bring such different perspectives together. It's also one of our core values. And we have made the statement as an organization that we have no tolerance for racism, bias, prejudice, discrimination, or hatred because of our skin color, ethnicity, religion, disability, socioeconomics, gender, or sexuality. So those are some pretty strong statements that we've come out with in the last couple of years. But statements are one thing, right? Action is another. And so we are committed in Rotary to treat everyone with dignity and respect. We know how important it is to allow everyone's voice to be heard and provide equitable opportunities for fellowship, service, and leadership, all the things that we enjoy in Rotary. And our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is clearly outlined by the board decisions where they have accepted the recommendations of the DEI task force. We've been working for 3 years on providing the outline and the tools and the resources to change the culture in our Rotary clubs. So such as the DEI code of conduct or our commitment statement that replaces our first DEI statement. So one of the things that I love about our commitment statement, about our journey in Rotary and our commitment to DEI, is that we are honest. I think we're being very honest and transparent from a leadership perspective that we need to continue to learn and we need to continue to do better. And it's a journey that we will never be able to take a box and say we're done, but it's also a journey in that we will make mistakes. And that is part of change. But what we need to do is we need to learn from these mistakes, and we need to have honest and respectful conversations with our members, our communities, and the partners that we join together with. So the other thing we have to recognize is that, as I mentioned, it's a journey, but some will maybe well on their way in this journey, others maybe just beginning it, and others may not start on this journey. We see around the world, and I get asked this questions all the time, why is Rotary being involved in something that's political? And my answer is always, this isn't political. This is a human right. These are human rights that we're talking about when we talk about inclusion and equity. But we also know that many are hesitant to have these conversations. And it's the result of fear, the fear of missing out, the fear of giving up a piece of the pie, a fear of your chance to leadership when we include other people. But I always say, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to our 4-way test. And let's remember that as an organization, we stand for human rights, we stand for empowerment of girls, and most importantly, we stand for peace. And if we all remember that, and we all take small steps in the same direction, we will reflect our community. We will attract members. We will support our current members. And also we will reflect not only what our current membership is looking for in their Rotary experience, but keep us relevant in the years to come. The other thing I always say is this isn't a buzzword. This isn't something that we've just embarked on to bring more people into Rotary and move us beyond that 1.2 million members or 1.4 Rotary people in Rotary, including our Rotaractors. It's not just about recruitment. It's not just about bringing those members in that currently aren't represented in our club. It's also, more importantly, I think, taking the time to get to know our current members and having those conversations and respectful so that our current members know that they're valued and can contribute and can be heard. So, I always say, when people say, where do we start? I say, have a conversation. Have a conversation and commit to the journey and begin with your club members. Go to Rotary.org. There's a ton of resources, and there's so many ways that we can start these conversations in our club, including bringing in people to speak on having that lived experience, and it's a learning opportunity for us. So, I'm not going to speak too long about the benefits, or because I know we're going to probably get to that, but really I'm speaking about the why. And Rotary International will always provide the leadership, but it's in the club and districts and conversations like we're having tonight here that is really going to move our membership to one of a culture of inclusion and equity. So the board, the trustees, they can help support, they can show tone from the top, they can show leadership, but we do know that the change in our clubs will be really the change that will ensure that Rotary will be relevant for generations to come. And so I think, and I thank you for having this conversation tonight, because every time we have these conversations, and I know many of you are champions, many of you already understand, many of you are on this journey, but there's always that little piece, that little nugget that we can each take away from these conversations that just really impact us in our conversations and relations with people both inside and outside of Rotary.
Well, Valarie, thank you. One of the things as I began this journey of understanding, of being more compassionate and understanding, and even myself learning, because really and truly we're all learning every day in our life. Rotary has many strategic plans, as you all know, on this call today, and one of the strategic priorities is about our ability to adapt. And in my mind, as we go forward, adapting and being inclusive is really going to be what helps springboard Rotary to the future. And Valarie, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but when we talk about ability to adapt, I find that fundamentally this is really a big part of that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I actually think that DEI relates to all 4 of our strategic priorities, certainly enhancing participant experience, increasing our impact, and expanding our reach. But you're absolutely right that, by definition, if we look at adapting, it's really about bringing in new perspectives and ideas so that we can strengthen Rotary and we can move forward, because that's what adapting and change management is all about. And one of the things that I really, comes to mind right away is the last 3 years. COVID and the pandemic has certainly shown us that we need to find new ways. When we were challenged right when the pandemic hit, we needed to find new ways to get online. And we needed to find new ways to lead and to fundraise, that we couldn't be in person and do these things. And I think in a lot of ways, it was a real springboard for our members who, change is hard, right? We're not always easy to adapt, and we don't always want to embrace change. And I remember somebody suggesting, oh, let's have a go-to meeting instead of getting together. And it was like, oh, do you know how to do that? Who knows how to set that up? Today, it's just something that comes automatically. So we've already adapted, and now we need to look how we can adapt more quickly to the changing world around us. And, in the first question that you asked me, Sue, you were talking about why is this important in society today? And I think that we need to adapt in Rotary to the changing world around us. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is definitely that changing world around us. And if we want to be relevant, we need to open our eyes, open our hearts, and open our ears and listen and be willing to have conversations. So the other thing, that really has come about, and again, it goes to equity and inclusion, is some of the roles that we've had in Rotary. And we've been talking in Rotary for years about simplifying roles, whether it's a club president or a district governor. We don't have a lot of people putting up their hand to do these roles. We certainly don't have a lot of people who are working full time or have young families. And yet we're missing out. We're missing out on the perspectives and leadership of a group of people who we have kind of traditionally excluded from the ability to lead because of some of the number of roles, the number of jobs that they have to do in these roles. And so, quite often we hear, I'll do that when I retire. I don't have time to do it now. But I believe that the conversation of adapting and the way we can do business differently in Rotary is also opening our eyes to bring that innovation and sustainable change that we need with new perspectives of leadership, which I think, when we elevated Rotaract, I think that was such an important change for our organization, that Rotaractors are now on all of our committees, have a chance to apply for grants. We're only going to be stronger when we have more thought at the table, more thought leaders at the table, and they're leaders today, not tomorrow. So I think this whole conversation around DEI, this whole conversation around change and what we've come through in the last 3 years has really moved us forward in a lot of different ways. But you're right. I mean, it certainly is aligned with this strategic priority.
Great. Thanks so much, Valarie. Tracy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe have a perspective or even some suggestions for Valarie and Sue for clubs that have some new thinkers, some folks that would like to change the way that clubs function or the way that a specific club does business. But then we have the long-serving club members that really are not open to change, and maybe some suggestions on how clubs might handle a situation like that.
Sue, do you want to go first, or do you want me to jump in?
Go right ahead, please.
Okay, you know what? For me, it all begins with a conversation, because we don't know where our members are, how they're showing up, what their skill sets that they bring that we're not even aware of. And until we sit down and have those conversations, those honest, respectful conversations, we have no idea the skill set within our clubs. Quite often I speak to president about the white paper exercise, and it really is a strategic planning exercise simplified down to like something as simple as a piece of white paper. And that is asking everyone to design what their Rotary experience, what they want their Rotary experience to look like. And, don't follow any rules, don't worry about policies and procedures. And just starting that conversation will show you what, and you notice I didn't say Rotary Club look like, but what their Rotary experience looks like. And so sometimes hearing different perspectives or different ideas in a very open forum that's non-judgmental, that is respectful, might bring some of those people from that frozen middle to movable consensus to change. But I think it really is about understanding what value everybody is looking for in Rotary, because that really is one of the reasons why people leave Rotary, is when their value isn't met.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, Valarie. I think people just need to feel comfortable that they come into a meeting or that they sit down at a conversation, whether it's a committee meeting or a full club meeting, and that their opinion and the things that are important to them are recognized by people as there's value there, and we want to embrace that person and make their voice heard. There are times, unfortunately, when we are so busy doing our club business, we forget about the new member or who might have joined, who's still getting their feet wet, but they don't really feel comfortable yet. And we're also never asking them what they want. I mean, that whole thing of finding out what people want out of Rotary is a really key factor. And when you do that, and you are more welcoming to people, and you make their opinion count, you're going to have club members who stick with their clubs and become more productive and more creative just because you listen to them. But sometimes we don't listen to our members because they're not thinking the way that we've always thought before. and the way we've always done things before doesn't really give us a lot of room to have that diversity and to make people feel like they're included and that their opinion counts. At the end of the day, it is all about the member experience and making sure people feel welcomed into their clubs. And when they feel more welcomed and their opinions matter, no matter what walk of life they come from, then they're going to be more engaged and they're going to be better members. I mean, that's just how it is. And they'll stay along for the ride. Now, I did see in the chat box that people were asking for some of the materials. I will tell you that we have some of it in the documents on our own website, but Rotary.org, there's a long, and I will be sure that everybody who signed up for today's session, I will email out to you the full DEI code of conduct, as well as there's an abbreviated one, kind of a Cliff Note one, if you will. I'll send that to you as well. I'll just email that out to everybody. We have had many different materials and PR materials on this topic. There's also a great course in the Learning Center, and a lot of this stuff will be there as well. So lots of resources for all of you to be a part of. So Valarie, as we talk about DEI, I mean, Rotary has definitions of it. I think we've touched on some of it. And again, this is something we can forward out to all of you, but do you want to just touch on what Rotary's definition of diversity, equity, and then inclusion is?
Sure. Probably a combination of Rotary and just kind of definitions that I use quite often. But when we think of Rotary, we're in over 200 countries and territories. So, diversity describes all of us, and diversity is who we are, right? It's the fact that we all come from all different backgrounds, experiences, identities, regardless of, and I could list them all out, but you know them, their age, ethnicity, race, color, disability, religion, socioeconomic status, culture, sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity. So I went through them. There's also thought process, and we could add to these identities probably on a daily basis. And so, but we felt it was very important in Rotary that we didn't put a general description of what diversity was and didn't hide behind terms, because we thought it was very important that when you look at the definition of diversity, that you see yourself, that you're recognized, and that we are supporting our members. But we also have to be aware that there's visible and invisible diverse characteristics that we each have. And I think that's really important. And maybe to Tracy's question, I have a really unique experience this week that I gave my classification talk at my club, because I am a new member of a club as of August, because I moved. And, I felt welcomed. I felt like I was, a new member in the community and felt welcome. But after I gave my classification talk, I really felt welcomed. I really felt that the members listened to me. They understood my background of who I was. The fact I grew up in this community, moved away for 25 years and came back, and all of a sudden everyone had so much to talk to me about, from, how the community has changed. And so that's another really good way of just having those conversations with our members. So, that's really where we can bring in those invisible diverse characteristics that people wouldn't know about you until you really have those conversations. But of course, I say diversity is like a noun. It's who we are. And inclusion is the verb. It's the act of including or being included in a group. And it's where we have that sense of belonging that I just talked about, where, when we feel comfortable, when we feel like we have a respectful relationship and we feel that we can show up as our true authentic selves and to be valued. So that's when we truly feel like we're included. Now, we're hearing a lot of conversation about the term equality versus equity. And I really want to clarify that equality means providing the same thing to everyone, and it's very different to equity. And in Rotary, we believe in equity, and we recognize that we don't all start from the same place, and we must acknowledge and make adjustments to imbalances. And that might mean providing levels of support and certain resources that are necessary so that participants have the tools to be productive in Rotary and leadership or their Rotary experience in general. So just really, I don't want to shy away from not talking about that, because you hear a lot about equality versus equity, and they're really not the same. So equity is diversity, equity, and inclusion is what Rotary believes in. That's a great visual of, yeah, exactly. The bottom, of course, is equality, where we give everyone the same size of bicycle, regardless of their disability, their size. You can see they're all struggling, and equity certainly allows everybody to participate in the manner so that they feel included and welcomed. Thanks, Sue.
That, I think, was my favorite graphic that we got at IA. So I had to share it.
Awesome graphic. I love it.
I mean, I just love it because, I mean, that really makes it like it's right in your face. Yes, Therese.
I love that too. I just have to say that one of the conversations I've had at some of the clubs that I've met at is, as a lifelong social worker, I'm always looking for the handicap entrance, or I'm always wondering, where is the elevator? Or, and in so many, clubs that I visited, it's hard to get there. It's hard to get in the building, or it's hard to find the meeting room. And so, although many of us may be comfortable with the same place that we've been, and how many of us really love that phrase, well, this is the way we've always done it, right? Sometimes we need to think a little differently. And I love that equity is not equal. We need to think of, when we're welcoming our guests or welcoming new members, are we, and Sue and I have had this kind of conversation about belonging and feeling welcomed. Do you feel welcome if you're able to get to the room? Are you able to find the room and feel welcomed once you get there? So just wanted to make that point.
And that's a great point, Therese, because we're not just talking about attracting new members who may not be able to get into our building. We're talking about an aging Rotary membership as well, and let's face it, disability is the one demographic that any of us can join tomorrow. So it's not just about ramps or elevators. It could be visual impairments, hearing impairments. We just really need to let our members know, new or current, that we're ready to provide accommodations or resources that is necessary so they can either become Rotary members or continue their Rotary experience. But it's a great point.
We talk a lot about, DEI and it's important, and making sure that our club culture is in such a way where we embrace DEI. How can we as club members, and how can we as Rotary clubs overall implement a culture that is welcoming to people? So, I mean, we're talking about some of the little things, but how do we really say, okay, this is what we're going to do? What are the steps? Like, how do we get there?
Well, if you bear with me and humor me, I'm going to share a business example before I answer your question, Sue. So as was said in my intro by Kim, my husband and I were Tim Horton restaurant owners in Toronto for 25 years. And during that time, let me just stop and say, my husband is deaf. He was born deaf, and so he understands disability. And so we hired over 250 workers with disabilities of all types in all positions for meaningful paid positions, including senior management. And what happened is our workforce represented the community. So at any time, we had 20% of our workforce that were disabled, and which reflects actually the world's population that's disabled, 1 in 5 or 20%. And we did that not from a charity point of view, but it was because it was good for business. And our team were more productive, innovative, and our retention rates we're double that of the industry average. So I quite often use this analogy and then say, you know, let's think of our Rotary clubs as a franchise. So your employees or your members come from the community where you operate. They're the fabric of your society. And their families are your customers, or in your Rotary, they're your supporters and your volunteers. And what happens is that when you build awareness and loyalty and your team or your Rotary club reflects the community, you're touching everyone in the community. Everybody can look at the Rotary Club or look at your business and say, that reflects my values or my community or my family. And then you build that capacity of diverse membership, and more will want to apply because they see themselves represented. So when somebody walks through the door of your Rotary Club and they see members and they identify with them, and let's think back to when women first joined Rotary, which is the demographic I can speak about. You know, if you were that token woman walking through the door, you knew that you were going to have a bit of an uphill battle, right? So it's all about building capacity and having that diverse membership, and then more will be welcomed to come through the door and have that feeling of belonging and contribution. And then, you know, we can take it a step further when we start to have fundraising or hands-on activities, and it touches our diverse community. We also show that we, you know, want to build those relationships, want those partnerships, and when we have diversity in our clubs, we're viewed more seriously because we have representation from the same groups that we're serving in our current memberships. So, you know, if I can just go back to my restaurant example, as you probably know or do know, there's a Tim Hortons on a lot of corners in Toronto. But our customers told us that they came to us not because we were the closest Tim Hortons on their way to home, on their way home or on their way to work, but because we represented their community. And so I use that example because I think that's what our club should look like. And that's what an inclusive culture looks like, when people automatically walk through the door and feel like they can be included. But as I said, it's not a membership drive. And I briefly touched on the fact that Rotary International does a number of surveys, and we ask our members why they're leaving, and it's always club culture. So what is club culture, right? Club culture is something happened within the club that I'm no longer comfortable with, or maybe I never was comfortable with. It could be the tone, it could be the leadership, it could be inappropriate jokes, it could just be an atmosphere that people don't feel that they're respected. So, you know, diversity is only one part. Inclusion and equity are so much not more important, because diversity to me means we're just showing up. But to build an inclusive culture, and having that culture of respect and expectation of what our membership looks like, and how we treat each other, is really how we're going to not only attract new members, but retain the members that we currently have. So I think it really starts with us, but it starts, you know, before we reach out to the community. I think we need to have those conversations within our clubs, because if we fail and if we make the mistake of thinking that we are truly ready to welcome those who aren't in our Rotary Club today, and we don't handle it right, we really risk our reputation in our community. Because even when we attend or go to restaurants, right, we don't always want to give that positive review, but we're so quick to give that negative review. And that's the risk that we run in Rotary as well, if we reach out to the community before we really understand and build that inclusive culture in our clubs.
Yeah, Valarie, you are 100% correct. Making sure that our house, if you will, is kind of in order, and that we all go into a way of thinking where we're going to be accepting of others and listen to our members. Everyone's got to kind of be on board there, because if you don't get the group to get that, it could kind of backfire on you, if you will. I feel like embracing different people at the end of the day is going to help all of our clubs, not only from a growth standpoint. As Valarie said, this is not necessarily the membership drive, but it will make people feel more comfortable. And when people feel more comfortable, more accepted, and more welcomed, they are going to do more work in your club, be happy, and will have a positive experience. And I think it'll help our turnover rate in Rotary at the end of the day a lot. Yeah, Liz.
I had an opportunity earlier this week to participate and document a conversation between 3 generations of Rotarians that also happen to be women. The middle person in the story was part of chartering a new club, and to get her over the hump, to get to that 20th member, she turned to her mom, and her mom was a good sport, and her mom joined. But what happened next was in the conversation was really powerful to me. Her mom is a person who's a full-time wheelchair user, and as she joined and started to participate, because her daughter asked her to, why not? But as she started to participate, the quiet kindness of the fellow clubmates started to come into play. When she would arrive, they'd always have a table place for her that didn't have a chair so that she could roll right up and they didn't have to make a big thing about rearranging the furniture. Somebody just, without prompting, took on the quiet kindness of making sure there was a place so that she could roll right up. And then the next thing that happened was, a while into it, they had a visitor, a guest who was also a full-time wheelchair user. And that person ended up joining the club because she looked around and said, well, there's somebody like me here. And so the combination of the quiet kindness and the lead, the one at a time, the leading by example, by giving folks the opportunity to show up and say, hey, there's somebody like me here. I think one at a time leads us into the future.
Liz, thanks so much for sharing that. That's awesome. And yeah, we should all be part of conversations like that and hear stories like that and have it touch our heart and our spirit. And maybe then we would all be a little bit more respectful. And
you know what? Representation matters, right? And even if we think about this year with our own Jennifer Jones as the first woman president, how many women in Rotary has that influenced to put their name forward for club president, for district governor, and saying, I can see myself being president one day because Jennifer Jones, as a woman is president of our organization. So representation matters at all levels of all leadership in our organization, for sure.
Great, thank you. Great points. All right, so we're going to turn the tables now for all of you to participate in this next part here. So I'm going to read a couple of scenarios, and then we're going to open up and ask for you to maybe tell us maybe what could be different here to make things better, to be more inclusive. So here we go. I'm going to read this. So pardon my head to the side here, but I didn't do my double screen today. So this club has been recognized widely for the service that it does and is well known in the community. It has members of a variety of ages, diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, and a good gender balance. It meets weekly for drinks and dinner in a private room in the basement of a popular local steakhouse. So, how can this club that meets this way be more welcoming and perhaps be more inclusive based upon how they're meeting? Do you want me to read this one more time, or did everybody get it? Okay, Liz, I see your hand is up. Go.
Okay, so the first thing I would say, why are you in a room in the basement? Do you have signage up front? So even if that's the only room that's available, do you have a big Rotary sign outside that says, join us, come on in, making people feel welcome? That was the biggest thing. There was something else you said and now I've forgotten. But the fact that they're in a room cut off from everybody, they're not visible.
Well, and certainly being in a basement might be challenging for some people.
Yeah.
So let me just, a couple of other key points here. It meets weekly for drinks and dinner in the basement of a popular local steakhouse.
Mhm. Well, as somebody who doesn't drink or eat meat, it would, and not that I don't have a problem at all. I go to restaurants where people drink all the time, but especially a steakhouse, you might have some issues with the steakhouse more than the drinks, because there's always other drinks available, but oftentimes there's not other food available. And, here in the Virgin Islands, we have so many vegetarians and so many vegans. So it is a big issue here.
Great.
And I can jump on that as well. Like just the actual fact that it's a steakhouse, to me, sounds pretty pricey. Not everybody can afford to go to a steakhouse. So I think you might, not be that inclusive if it's an affordability issue for people that may not be able to put out that kind of money for a dinner and drinks.
Boy, this is a pretty welcoming crowd that's right on it. You got all the key points. All right, so let me go ahead and I'm going to read you one more. And Russ Jones, I think, just wrote a note. And yes, sir, you're correct. We use these scenarios at IA. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm just borrowing material. All right, one more scenario, everybody. This club is known for outstanding fellowship. The members know each other very well and enjoy spending time together. Most of them have been in the club for at least 5 years and are all similar age. They meet weekly on Tuesday afternoons and begin meetings with an invocation that is often religious. The members are mainly from similar racial, religious, and cultural backgrounds. Thoughts about that one? Okay, Liz.
Wow, there's so much wrong there. So much wrong. Saying the prayer, all being the same age, all having been in the club for at least 5 years. There were some other things you said. They know each other well. So many things that would make new people feel uncomfortable. We haven't said, we do a moment of silence. We don't do a prayer. So it's totally non-denominational. We don't say prayers here, but the whole same age thing, you're missing out on so many people.
I know a lot of people who, instead of doing an invocation, might do a Rotary inspirational moment because that's more inclusive that way. Okay, Tracy.
I didn't hear the word service in there. Their fellowship is strong, but they, for what you described, don't have a lot of service connections that might appeal to a different element of the community.
It certainly wasn't one of the selling points in this particular scenario. To me, also meeting in the afternoon, like unless you're retired, which might go back to why they're all similar age groups together. I mean, who can do usually a Rotary meeting at 3 p.m? So I didn't think an afternoon meeting was necessarily very inclusive. Well, good job, everybody. I think you were listening to what Valarie and others had to offer on this conversation. To me, when we talk about this topic, the key word is being respectful. And if you're respectful of others and how they feel and are not judgy, I think that will go a long way in making sure that we are inclusive and welcoming to people of all different backgrounds. I really think that's the key here. So with that, I'm going to open the floor. Valarie is our expert here. So if you have any questions or anything that we might be able to address, please, this is your time. And just, you don't even have to raise your hand. You can just unmute and ask away.
I appreciated those two examples, and I think they're really important. I would ask Valarie or whoever would like to respond, how do you find the balance between being inclusive and being everything to everyone? Do we have the obligation to be everything to everyone? And I think about new clubs which have a theme or a flavor. Some of them are clubs are focused around veterans issues or focused around human trafficking, pride clubs, all awesome features. But how do we balance the idea of we want to be inclusive, but we also may have a particular focus? Because if that focus is not of interest to someone, they might think, well, they don't want me here because I'm not interested in their focus. How do we balance that?
I think that's the beauty of choice. If you think about your Rotary Club that you may belong to, and maybe I'll speak about mine, we meet weekly, and there might be a speaker once every quarter or once every 2 months that really piques my interest. And the rest of the time, it's going to a Rotary Club meeting. And maybe that's what you absolutely want. But maybe you really want to use your level of expertise, your vocation, your passion in a cause-based club. And so that's where you would go. When you say being everything to everyone, I think the beauty is that everyone brings their everything to our Rotary clubs. And when we allow them to bring everything and bring it all, then that's when we benefit. I can tell you numerous stories of the inclusive environment that we had in our Tim Hortons and how we were so much better for it, how we had people immigrating to Toronto from countries and working alongside people that their country was at war with, and how we learned to listen to each other and respect each other's point of view, share each other's culture, have potluck dinners, celebrate religious holidays, or, Disability Day, International Women's Day, Day of the Disability, Pride, whatever the day may be, we became this celebratory group. And I think when we can bring everything to our Rotary clubs, I don't, when people say, I don't want to join Rotary, there's nothing for me in Rotary, I just think you don't really understand what Rotary is. And so I think we shouldn't be everything or try to please everyone. I think everyone should feel comfortable bringing everything to our Rotary clubs. And if we're open to it, I think we just become stronger.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I'm learning a lot here. But one thing I'd like to add is often, and it's not just in Rotary, maybe it's just part of living in the world today, you ask a question through email and you expect a response. You ask again, there is no response. You give up. So things like that, I know, people are busy and everything, but things like that can be very discouraging. And also, I think it's just, maybe I'm out in left field here, but I think it's common courtesy when somebody asks you a question, you give them an answer. Or you say, well, I don't know, maybe someone else can help you. But to just go silent, for me personally, it just gives me a very uncomfortable feeling.
Hi. So I wanted to just kind of extend what Liz was talking about some clubs that maybe have a theme. And I love to read the Rotary magazine. And I don't know if anybody saw the article this month about the transgender club that was formed in India. And I nearly cried reading it, thinking, here is an opportunity. So you're absolutely right, Liz. I think there are, I don't think that that if there was a club exclusively for the big and tall, like my pal Ed Smith, that I would be, probably, because I'm only 5'1.5 inches tall. But I think that we offer opportunities, and he knows I'm kidding with him, right, pal? But I think that the idea with DEI is that we are offering opportunities for people who may never have thought that they could be Rotarians before. That this isn't just, for maybe just business people, or maybe just, people who have wealth, or people who are retired. But, offering opportunities for other people. And if you haven't read this article, it's really very, very moving. So I think there is space in Rotary to have clubs that have a theme, and maybe welcome people who maybe haven't been welcomed before too.
The cool thing when you consider our geography and how many square miles our district really makes up, we have a lot of clubs, 52 going on 53. So 50, yeah, coming up 53. We're chartering on March 28th, I think. Anyway, so like if there's always a good fit, sometimes I'll talk to someone about Rotary and then they'll say, oh, well, when's your meeting? And I'll know just because I've had a good conversation with them that maybe my club's not a good fit for them. I've recommended people to so many other clubs based on what I see as their interest and where I feel a really good fit would be in a more comfortable situation for them. And I think we're blessed in our district that we do have, a diverse, not just number of clubs, but, diverse interests in our clubs. So there is really something for everyone. And I'm really proud of our district, actually.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that comment, Kim. It is about fit. It's just, and Jennifer has long used the story about dating and getting to know people before they join a club. And for whether it's a day of the week or the time that they meet or the frequency of their meeting or their service project focus, it's finding the right fit. And sometimes members will not fit well with a club that they've joined, and then they choose to leave because the culture isn't what they want. So here's an opportunity to create a club that's your culture. And I don't think we do enough to let our members know that is an option. And it just grows Rotary in ways that we don't even necessarily think about. So perhaps in the future, we can all do a better job of find a club that fits you.
Great, thanks, Tracy. Okay, 2 more comments, Sue, and then Joan.
Thank you. I'd like to add to Valerie's comment earlier in her presentation about how comfortable she felt after she did her This Is Your Life story to her newer club, and how welcomed and accepted she felt. One of the things that we've been doing sometimes in our club is inviting our older senior long-term members who haven't given This Is Your Life story in years. We invite them to do it. And isn't it ever interesting? These life stories are from all over the world. They have experienced interesting things in their lives and that you would never know about until you hear their stories. So we do it maybe 4 or 5 times a year from time to time, and and after they speak, people come up and hug them and tell them how much they've enjoyed their stories. So I think that's a way to include people that we wouldn't normally know much about.
Thanks, Sue. Last comment from Joan.
I just wanted to thank Valarie and Sue for your comment about get your house in order first before you sort of go out there and try to get the community to come to your club, because I'm the one that said, we're good. I'm just going to invite people to come in. I was part of in my corporate world. I really believed in diversity and multiculturalism. And so in my previous role in the corporate world, that's what I did. That's what I focused on. That's what I taught. And so I thought this was going to be really easy. Come on, guys, this is our community. We can do this and so on. But it didn't work. And so then I had to sit back, and I started, believe it or not, the leadership training for president-elects. And part of it was like sitting down with your club and finding out what was important to them. Why did they join Rotary? And what were we, were we meeting their expectations as to what they were looking for in Rotary? Because I realized that if we didn't all sit at the table together and decide what we were looking for, then it didn't matter how many people we brought in, we weren't going to match that, because everybody was different and they had different ideas and different goals. And it was so interesting because they shared so much of what their expectation was of Rotary and what they were looking for, that it helps to design a year where everyone gets what they're looking for. And then they're able to go out into the community and say, this is what we're doing. And I think that that's going to really make a difference. So I thank you for bringing that up.
Well, you're most welcome. All of us have had this happen to us. I know it happened to me. I remember going to one of the Adrian clubs early on in my Rotary journey and going to sit down at a table. I mean, it's as simple as this. I went to go sit down at a table. There was a vacant seat. And somebody said to me, oh, I'm sorry, Joe sits there all the time. Now, that's like step number one in welcoming. So again, you go back to getting your house in order. You want people to feel okay to come in and be a part of your meeting, and then when they're welcome and then their voices are heard, it's just going to make such a huge difference. So I think we've addressed all hands that were up and stuff. I can't thank Valarie enough for coming on, and I'm thrilled that we had 25 people on here. And you know what? This conversation with every person that we speak to, and hopefully everyone leaves here and then goes back to their clubs and maybe has a couple of more conversations. This is how we're going to take this topic, and we're going to take this important way of treating members in our clubs and in our district and making people feel welcome. And that's how we're going to grow Rotary, and we're going to retain the great members that we have. We really need to make them feel valued and respected. So Valarie, any final thought?
Ed, did you have your hand up? I didn't want to ignore a hand up there.
I just wanted to say that I concur with a lot of what you said. I do think it starts with you, and it starts with how broadly or narrowly you define yourself. I think you have to have the conversation within your group, because oftentimes Rotary clubs, well, we do maybe a good job of bringing people in, but then as soon as they're in, we want them to conform. So all of the individualism that they bring in, cross-pollination works in nature. None of us would be here without it. And we need a cross-pollination of ideas. I'm looking at this screen and I'm seeing how many women are on the screen, okay? And the thought that it wasn't until 1987 that they got a light bulb on and said, hey, it's a good thing. When we expand opportunities, we gain. DEI is about survival. It really is.
Thanks, Ed. Love your comments.
Rita has her
Rita?
hand up too.
I have my hands up. Yeah, thank you so much, Valarie, for this topic. I really enjoyed it. And I've learned so much that I'm going to take back to my club. You know, just as Sue mentioned in her introduction, that when Zoom was coming on, so there was so much difficulty and everything getting to maneuver the internet and all that. And just see that everybody's like into it now, you know. I'm here in Winnipeg listening to people in the US and people in all over the place. So it's something that warms my heart. And I'm very, very proud, you know, that, well, we are the first e-club of the district, and we are still on and kicking strong. I'm so glad that, you know, this topic came up. And I'm going to take back to my club also the benefit that I have gotten here. And I don't know if it's possible, if we can have the recording to share with my members also, you know, that were not able to come, you know, to listen in. So I so much appreciate this topic. And it wasn't what I was expecting, but I just said, I have to be here. I'm on holiday. So I said, why not? So it's so much, I've enjoyed it so much. And it's a good thing. I'm so glad that I was able to log in. Thank you so much.
That's
Thank
great,
you.
Rita. We're glad you joined us too.
If I could just say, Kim, for everybody's sake, when we do these learning bursts, we do record them and they're put up on the training tab on the district website. So you'll find this recording there as soon as Mr. and Mrs. Goldsen have a chance to download it and edit it.
That's great. We appreciate that, Sue.
Oh, okay, thank you so much, Sue.
Any other comments or questions before we wrap up? I think we've covered a lot of bases this evening, and it was an extremely valuable conversation. I'm so happy that we had it. Just even starting a conversation, I know I'm anxious to get this conversation going in our club. We definitely have to embrace DEI and some great ideas this evening. I wanted a copy of those scenarios, Sue, if that's possible, because I'd love to put that forward at my club. Those are really, really good. Just to, see how the club responds. So that's great. And Valarie, thank you so much for taking this time to share your insights as the global leader of DEI. What a privilege it was to have you with us. And we really appreciate that you made the effort and took the time to do that. And Sue, you're just an amazing Rotarian. You're a treasure in our district. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back over to our phenomenal district governor, who has just been doing a great job all year. She's just a fantastic leader, and I can't say enough about her. So Tracy, I'll turn it over to you for closing remarks.
Thanks, Kim. And Valarie and Sue, you've spent the evening with us, and hopefully we all walk away with some items that we can take back to our clubs and our communities and our families, perhaps. So thank you for sharing this evening tonight. I'm hoping this is a topic that will be repeated in the near future so that others might be able to learn as well. And with that, I'll just close out the evening. Thank you again for all that you do for Rotary. You've made such an impact this year, and I couldn't be more proud of our district. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Have a great night. Valarie, thank you.
Thank you, Valarie.
Good night,
See you
everyone.
soon.
Nice to
Good
see you
night,
all.
everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.